sounds like a chick flick.
Was unleashed.
What do you think?
You do realize this camp was closed down like 20 years ago.
Come here now.
Some woman, she went fucking nuts. Killed all these counselors.
I killed all the others.
Blamed them for her son's drowning. He was like deformed or retarded or something.
It'll be easier for you than it was for Jason.
Mom got hers. Apparently there was one survivor.
You need to be punished for what you did to him.
This girl, she cut that lady's head off with a machete.
Tits are stupendous.
It gets weirder.
Wade! Dude, if you're out there whacking off, man, that is not cool.
Her son, wear a condom. Jason,
I'm not gonna go out there with a boner.
he came back.
Fucking lucky there, Stretch. Came about that close to hitting the start button on a whoop-ass machine, boy.
I wanted to ask you, if maybe you've seen somebody. My sister.
She's dead.
Jason.
It's okay.
Of course I remember Clay. Why is he in my house?
I give a wicked blowjob too.
Okay, well, we'll try that out later.
The tits are fucking just
I know.
so juicy, dude. You got perfect nipple placement, baby.
Jason. It's okay. You can stop now.
Tits are stupendous.
Hi, this is Lisa Loring, Wednesday from the Addams Family, A Blood Frenzy, and Ice. And you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to The Hysteria Continues, episode 206. And before we start, just want to say a very special thank you to Ginny Hall Cameron for getting us that clip of Lisa Loring.
Awesome. Thank you, Ginny.
Yes, thank you.
Which I'm going to have to excise from the show because I used it on the last episode.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Well, we
We occasionally repeat ourselves, not often.
And we haven't thanked
We
Ginny.
never repeat ourselves,
No,
ever.
we never tell the same jokes.
Or pick the same movies for our top three over and over.
No, of course not.
You should have heard us talking about Toya in the toilet on the Patreon pick. So if there was ever a reason...
I'm not sure we weren't talking about the same thing, Justin.
Well, yes. Well, we've just done top 3 1985, and we had a lot of fun with that. Over an hour's worth of quality entertainment. Well, maybe 5 minutes worth of quality entertainment, and the rest another.
Nathan had something particularly gobsmacking to say in the course of that episode.
Well, Nathan's number one will surprise you and perhaps appall you, but probably won't surprise you, actually, really, in retrospect.
Yeah, but it's more like what he has to say about your number one in relation to his number one.
Yes.
That gobsmacked us all.
Indeed. Well, join us over on Patreon for our top 3 of 1980s. We're halfway through. But of course, now we are talking about the kind of redux of one of the most famous slasher movies of the 80s, the original Friday the 13th. And here for the redux, the remake treatment in 2009's Friday the 13th. So that's our main coming attraction, which will be coming up a little bit later. And it'll be interesting to see how we feel, because it's been just over a decade now, hasn't it, since it came out. So, it'll be interesting to see what we think of it. But before we do, let's see what we've been watching recently. So, Nathan, would you like to go first? Have you seen anything you'd like to tell us about?
Yes. I watched a short film that you recommended, Justin. It's called Possibly in Michigan.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's these two women shopping in a shopping mall, and a guy's following them, and he follows them home. And some crazy shenanigans go down when he gets to Sharon's house. It ends in some cannibalism. I won't crazy.
You're making it sound normal.
Oh, but it's not normal at all. It's very abnormal because it's very the people sing their lines, and it's a kind of a musical short. We've all seen it, so I'm very excited to hear what all of you think about it. I know what Erik thinks about it.
Yeah,
I'm excited to hear it anyway because he agrees with me.
I do. I'm completely obsessed with it. As you say, it reminded me of Boarding House, kind of. Except in an 11-minute version with everything sung rather than spoken, but it's like an art student, their final year project, but all they have at their disposal is a cheap video camera. It's just so off the wall. I mean, the guy that's following them is a guy in a mask with his mouth wide open. I don't even know what that's about. There's lots of hallucinogenic imagery like worms, and he uses sort of funny chroma key effects and that. It's just, and the songs are just eminently singable, but the backing music is done on what must be a sort of $10 Bontempi keyboard. It's just utterly wonderful. From 1983, so peak era.
What did you think, Joseph? Because I know Erik and Nathan have become slightly obsessed with this.
I've seen it. No, I watched this while I was high, and I'm glad I was high because I don't think I could watch this if I were sober. First of all, I have a very serious aversion to singing in films. I don't know why. I hate musicals, and this isn't a musical, but it's a very musical short film. And that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem for me is that after about 5 minutes, the whole art house student film thing just really starts to grate. It's funny, don't get me wrong. It's very weird, but I don't know. I don't have any interest in ever seeing it again, if I'm honest.
Which is the opposite of me. I can't stop watching it. I just want to watch it now.
Me too.
Well, I didn't discover it because I think it's already a bit of a cult movie, isn't it?
They're probably late to the game, so
yeah. But I kind of the reason I sort of because I thought, well, is this kind of some like a weird lost slasher? Because it's playing off the kind of slasher movie vibe, isn't it? To start off with, anyway, with the two women being chased or followed rather than chased around the mall by this kind of man with his weird sex.
I wouldn't say they're being chased.
Well, followed.
As such. I mean, they're standing at a perfume stall singing while a man in the background wears a mask. That's about it.
But he does follow them down the escalator, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's not the most high octane of chase scenes in a
it's not exactly
movie.
the end of Halloween or.
No, but he does. But then other people turn up with masks, don't they, outside their house or one of their houses. It reminded me a bit of. God, what was that film? Oh, it's gone out of my head. I knew it would. You're Next, where the animal masks sort of turn up.
Yeah, it's exactly like You're Next. It's exactly like You're Next.
Yeah,
if you liked You're Next,
You're Next, you'll love possibly in Michigan.
Yeah.
Only the masks thing, which kind of reminded me because it plays that whole Halloween, the original John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween thing with the suburban road, doesn't it, and the house. But it's not a slasher movie by any stretch.
Now he's comparing it to Halloween. Okay.
Oh my God, Nathan! Somebody stop Justin.
Well, actually, I thought it was more akin to Jean Cocteau's Bella Bête.
Oh, shut up.
Bête.
You seriously need to stop now, Justin.
Sorry.
It's extremely artistic.
Well, I thought it had shades of Ingmar Bergman. Yeah. So, yes, possibly in Michigan. So it's on YouTube if you do want to see it.
I enjoyed it, but I think I'll just let it sit as it is and never watch it again. That way I'll have somewhat of a positive memory.
Well, there you go. Okay. Right. Well, thank you. Nathan, is there anything else?
I honestly can't think of anything else that I've seen lately. I mean, I watched Slumber Party Massacre Part 2 last night.
Okay. Does it improve with age?
Yes. God, it just gets better. Sally's song in it gets better too. What
Pie in the sky.
most is a pie in the sky.
I have seen. Was it Scream Factory's released? Somebody's released dolls, haven't they? Like a doll of the kid in the first one. Have they done the one from the sequel as well?
I know they did the original Russ Thor.
Just the killer, is it?
I think so. Yeah, I think it may have come with their special edition Blu-ray, but I might be wrong. But we haven't covered part 3 yet, have we?
No, we have.
Did we?
We have.
Oh God!
Yeah, we have.
Oh,
okay.
Did we actually do a whole episode on it?
It's 160 something or 170 something.
God.
Yeah, we covered it.
God,
Oh my God, I'm having a Blood and Black Lace moment. I don't remember covering it.
Indeed.
No, we actually did cover this one. We still haven't covered Blood and Black Lace, though.
I know that, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Nathan. Joseph, how about you?
Yes. Full disclosure, the first film I'm talking about was written and directed by a friend of ours, Joshua Gratton. It's called Cuties, and it's a slasher film, independent slasher film made for about $9.5 thousand. So, full disclosure, he is a friend, so I'm going to try to avoid the pitfalls of saying, oh my God, this is the greatest movie ever, because honestly, it's not. I mean, for $9,000, it looks great. Well, here's the thing. I enjoyed Cuties, but Josh warned me right off the bat that he tried to inject a lot of his own style of humor into the film, and I don't really quite get his humor, if I'm honest. Some of this film is very, very bizarre. Like, the plot is basically this kid or this group of friends, and I guess it's high school or college. I wasn't quite sure on that. But one of the boys, it's a bunch of gay boys, and one of the boys is mad because there's a killer around killing the gay characters, and he's mad because the killer is not targeting him, and his whole thing is like, oh, am I not good enough to be targeted by the killer? So, already off the bat, you have this very strange premise that's it actually kind of works on that kind of okay kind of level, but the film, the murders are kind of spaced too far apart for me, if I'm honest. They spend a lot of time with these characters basically passing around prop marijuana, and they focus so much on handing someone else a joint that I thought maybe this was some sort of anti-drug PSA for a while there, Josh. But I enjoyed your film. It's not really my type of film, if I'm honest, because like you said, I really don't get your sense of humor. But I did like the slasher stuff. There was a lot of great shots in this film, and it looks really good. It's shot really well, and there's some great cinematography. It's not boring, I'll give it that. It's just, it's kind of like possibly in Michigan, it's too weird for my taste. So a thumbs up, but with reservations. I'll say that.
Well, I can sympathise with you, Joseph, because I don't get Eric's sense of humour either, and I don't think many people do. But
it's too sophisticated for you whore.
So, yes, we've not seen that one, Cuties, yet, but hopefully we'll do one day soon. So, did you see that, Nathan?
I did. I saw it a little while back, and it was an interesting one. And like Joe said, I did really like the slasher stuff. I like that a lot in it. So, I enjoyed it. It's one of those things where, you guys know in this day and age, anybody can make a movie. But anyway, it's good to see one, that kind of has, some decent, production values and stuff, because sometimes they turn out to not have a lot of good production values.
I'll say this. I've seen a lot of the 10K and under indie films, and I've made one, and I'd say Cuties is probably one of the up on the higher echelon of those, as far as looking good is concerned. But I don't know, just go into this with reservations when it is released, because it's not full on slasher. It's very arty in a way, but it's like almost comically arty. It's hard to explain, but it's just a very weird movie. Like I said, it fits with Nathan's pick of or Nathan's recently seen of possibly in Michigan. It would go well on a double bill, I think, with that.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Joseph. Anything else?
Yes. Just the other night, I watched this is not horror film at all, but I watched a documentary called Fly Colt Fly, The Legend of the Barefoot Bandit. And I wanted to talk about this because it's a very rousing documentary. It's a true crime documentary about this kid who one day just decides, hey, I want to live in the woods and be like a survivalist. And he's a five-finger bandit. Let's be honest. He steals anything that's not bolted down. And the whole film is basically this huge manhunt looking for him through the woods, and he goes off and he starts by robbing small things, and he moves on to where he just basically teaches himself how to fly planes, how to drive cars, how to drive boats, and he steals them over and over, and he keeps eluding the authorities. And the whole time you're sitting there thinking, okay, what this kid's doing is wrong, and I don't condone it, but you're rooting for him because he's not a violent criminal. He seems to care about people. He cares about animals. There's a few scenes in this film that will make you stand up and cheer because how it relates to animals. So yeah, like I said, I don't condone what this guy did. This kid, he's like this kid. He's like a teenager. He's not even 20 years old yet. But I don't condone what he did. But the whole time I'm rooting for him because he's just so crafty and clever that you want him to face justice, but at the same time you want him to get away with it. So yeah, it was a very, very fun documentary, and certainly it kind of reminded me a little bit of the one we talked about, Don't Fuck with Cats. Certainly not, with a lead figure who's despicable. Rather, it kind of does that whole cat and mouse stuff like Don't Fuck with Cats did very well. So yeah, it's a very fun documentary if you haven't seen it. It's called Colt Fly. It's about a boy named Colt Harris Moore. And I'd never heard about this case until I read about it the other night. So I watched the movie on YouTube, and it's up there for free. So if you haven't seen that, I do recommend that. It's a very fun documentary.
Cool. Okay. Well, it's one to look out for. I've not watched it yet, but I know you recommended it the other day. So, yeah, we'll check that out. Excellent. Okay. Anything else, Joseph?
I don't think so. Nathan, did you watch Colt Fly?
No, not yet.
Okay. Yeah, that's all from my recently seen.
Okay. Right. Well, Erik, how about you?
Okay, well, I saw the big budget version of possibly a Michigan. I know you've seen this one, Joseph. Justin, I don't know if anyone else has. It's called In Fabric, which is the latest movie by Peter Strickland. The only other film of his I have seen was the Bamboozling Barbarian Sound Studio, which was super weird, and I'm not sure I fully enjoyed it, but it prepared me nicely, set me up nicely for what to expect with In Fabric, because this film is about a dress that is cursed. So it's much like I'm Dangerous Tonight, but this isn't your regular supernatural horror film. It's laced with dark humor and quirky kind of art house pretensions, which would normally kind of turn me off a film. But in this instance, I was just engrossed by just the film's weirdness and also the fact that it didn't take itself too seriously, which is just as well as you have shots of, the sentient dress crawling across the carpet, as it goes about its evil ways. So it's a good thing it doesn't take itself seriously. But I mean, every character in the film is weird, and it doesn't seem to take place in anything resembling reality. It almost takes place in another dimension. So it has kind of a fever dream quality, but it's not as abstract as something like The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears, which it shares the same DNA with. This one has been reviewed in places as being like a cross between Are You Being Served and Suspiria, which I think is quite accurate. It has kind of a WTF Giallo vibe to it. There's some great characters in it. Steve Oram from Sightseers and Julian Barrett from The Mighty Boosh are in there as this pair of very odd but hilarious bank managers. But it's the enigmatic store clerk, Mrs. Lookmore, who steals the show. She's just such a strange character. I mean, she's so bizarre that she makes Nathan look normal, and that is saying something. Sorry, Nathan.
Hey.
Delayed hey. So In Fabric is a very unique film, and its bizarre ambience and offbeat tone kind of really worked for me when sometimes those attributes sometimes can turn me off a film. It made me want to revisit Barbarian Sound Studio because as I said, I found that one too weird when I watched it first to enjoy, but maybe I might like it more now with a second viewing. But In Fabric, yeah, it was a very unique film, I thought. What did you've seen it, haven't you, Justin?
I have, yes. I liked it very much, but it's an acquired taste, probably. It's kind of weirder than the remake of Suspiria, definitely, in so much that it's kind of purposely weird, but it's still quite engaging. And I love the kind of 1970s vibe running through it. So yeah,
the close-ups of old fashion catalogs from the era stuff is really kind of fun, I thought.
Yeah, no, I really liked it. It was I like Barbarian Sound Studios as well, but again, it's not a popcorn film, but it played cinemas in the UK. So yeah, if you got a slice of the weird, then definitely check it out.
Okay, well, the other one I saw is Dr. Sleep. Now, I watched the extended director's cut that's come out in Blu-ray, and it goes on forever, basically, because it's 181 minutes long. Now, Dr. Sleep is not a bad film as such, but it felt to me like The Shining crossed with Underworld, the Kate Beckinsale movies. It's a sequel to The Shining, but we're following the grown-up Danny Torrance, and we meet some new children who have the gift of The Shining, but there are this sort of group of baddies that are out to get them because they're this kind of vampire cult who feed on the essence of people who have The Shining. So they go around the country abducting and killing these children, and one of them decides to fight back and teams up with Ewan McGregor's character as the grown-up Danny Torrance. So it has a completely different vibe to The Shining, which I knew going in because I'd read the reviews and they said, look, don't expect a sequel as such to Kubrick's film. It just takes one character and puts them into a completely new universe and a completely new setting. Although the finale of the film does take place in the Overlook Hotel, and they've recreated it really well. It looks identical. But as I said, it reminded me of kind of the Underworld franchise, where you have these different races of people with supernatural abilities all having this kind of private underground war with each other. And it felt more kind of fantasy than horror. I thought it was okay. I was surprised that for a film of that duration, 181 minutes, that there's not a huge amount of characters in it. Normally 3-hour films have like a zillion characters with like 40,000 plot threads all going on at once. But this one just felt very linear, and it just felt, why was it 3 hours long? This could have been told in a tight 90 minutes, because there's just not enough. I don't think there was enough story there to maintain 3 hours. I'm not sure what you thought, Justin, because I think you've seen this as well. But I thought the film was okay, but that's about it.
Yeah, we have discussed this before, haven't we? But I hadn't seen the whole thing actually. The version I saw, I think we had a power cut when we were watching it, and it kind of stopped towards the end. And I think it's sort of telling that I haven't bothered finishing it for me, because I did. I've spoken about it before, but I read the book because I run hot and cold on Stephen King, and some of his books and adaptations I love, really, really love. But I was really excited to read Doctor Sleep, and I reread. Well, actually, I think I read for the first time The Shining, the book, in preparation. And maybe that was actually a mistake, because when I went into the book, I really wasn't that impressed. It felt very. It was kind of really, it's just the best you can come up with. The kind of the thing. At least the film left out the fact that in the book the vampires have bunny teeth and looked like concrete blonde or whatever. It just didn't work for me. In the film, I think the film was hampered by it, because I really like Mike Flanagan. I like a lot of what he's done, but I know he's very excited to do the adaptation of this. But it didn't really work for me. So I think it was a misfire on the part of Stephen King, and the film. And I think, the bits of the film I liked. I thought the recreation of the outlook, the hotel was great, and technically it's very it's very polished, and it's amazing what they've done with it. But yeah, it's not for me. I mean, funnily enough, actually, I was reading some of the reviews of The Shining when it came out, and because I'm always interested in these kind of old reviews, and I didn't realize actually at the time when The Shining came out, a lot of critics really hated it. They really thought it was rubbish.
Yeah.
So some of them thought it was amazing and said it was a masterpiece, but actually a good lot of critics just thought it was complete and utter garbage. So it was. It's interesting how with that going forward and what King wrote, but I think he could have come up with a much better story than he did. But that's just my tuppence, as it were.
Anyone else seen it, guys?
No.
3 hours? 3 hours?
Yep.
No, I'll pass. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else?
Okay, no, that's it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have another recently seen. So when there's a break, let me know.
Well, you can go,
there's a break
now.
You can go now because I'm finished.
Okay. I watched Midsummer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and what did you think?
I really liked it. I thought it was actually a really well done movie. And it's very interesting. The students show up and this, commune of people, they seem so nice, but it's very sinister vibes from the very beginning. And it has this great feeling of dread hanging over it like the whole time, despite like the really like beautiful scenery. So
Did you see Hereditary as well?
Yes, I did.
And which did you prefer? Because I thought Midsummer. Yeah, I thought Midsummer was much more my cup of tea. Yeah, I just questioned all the way through it why they stick around, because it's quite obvious from the second they set foot in wherever it's set, Finland or somewhere, that
something's not right.
That something's not right, and they should get out of there. Yeah,
but they just keep sticking around.
Yep.
I like
all for the sake of a stupid thesis.
Yeah. I like the fact that most of Hereditary kind of takes place at night, doesn't it? Whereas Midsummer everything is kind of blinding sunshine, but I think it's very skillfully made in so much it's kind of weird in not in the same way, but similar way to in Fabric, but it's much more of a crowd pleaser. It walks the line between sort of a crowd pleaser and an art house horror film. More successfully, arguably than say something like The Witch, which
I would agree.
Yeah. So interesting. But you've not seen that yet, Joseph, have you? I don't think.
No, I've not seen it. Isn't it like 3 hours as well?
Yep. If you watch the director's cut. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've seen a few things. One of the ones that I saw, which I really, really enjoyed, is Come to Daddy with the new Elijah Wood film, which has just been released pay-per-view sort of in the last couple of weeks or so. And it's I can't really talk too much about it because it's one of those films that just kind of takes all these kind of sudden swerves in tone and subject matter and storyline and everything, and a number of times it becomes a film that you don't necessarily expect, but actually it's really well done in so much sometimes you get a film that will suddenly go take a left turn and you won't enjoy it as much as, say, another film, what came before it, or vice versa. But the kind of basic premise of this is, again, it's kind of a kind of retro feel, but it's got the title screen is like something like Play Misty for Me, or something like that. The typeface is very 1970s kind of grindhouse or thriller sort of typeface. And the basic premise is Elijah Wood plays this kind of Hollywood hipster who turns up, goes to visit his long estranged father at his remote sort of lakeside house, and when he gets, after his father's written to him and saying he really wants to see him, so he hasn't seen him for years, he turns up and his father just acts kind of weird, and Elijah was just really unsure about why he's invited him. And their relationship starts off badly, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then the film goes off in a different direction a number of times, but it all kind of sort of falls kind of firmly within the kind of horror thriller feel throughout it, the genre. But I really liked it. I thought it was, highly entertaining, really, really good. So, and I've mentioned this on Messenger to you guys. Did any of you manage to catch it?
I did watch it, and now I halfway through I got a phone call from work, so I was kind of watching it in the background for the second half. But I did enjoy what I saw. The first half hour or so, I was like, "This isn't a horror film. What's going on here?" And then it starts to do those twists and turns, and you're like, "Okay." So I would urge you guys, if you are watching it, to stick with it, because the first half hour it's more kind of a drama. A black comedic drama almost, but then it starts veering into more interesting territory after that, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What about you, Joseph? Have you seen it?
No, I've not watched it yet.
Okay, right. Well, that's one to check out. The other film that we saw, the director Troy Escamilla very kindly sent us a link to watch his latest slasher opus, Teacher Shortage, which was due out at some point this year. Now, Troy is a big fan of the slasher movies, so very much cut from the same cloth as ourselves, fan of the classic slashers. And he's released his Party Night and Stirring, aka I think it's Mrs. Claus, wasn't it? So his Christmas slasher and his 80s throwback sort of teen party slasher, I can guess, with Party Night. A Teacher Shortage is his latest film, and it's kind of flips the whole thing on its head in so much it's set in a high school where not the students are being stalked and killed, but actually the teachers in the English department are being bumped off one by one. So it's definitely his best film so far. I've enjoyed all his films, but as an indie filmmaker, sometimes we talked about. I don't know if it was on with this one or the Patreon we were talking about. Of course, it was when we were talking about Joshua's film, wasn't it? Sort of saying that the films on the low budget sometimes can be hampered by their lower budget. And to be fair, I mean, I've written a review for the movie on Hysteria Lives, and I have mixed feelings about Teacher Shortage because I kind of really enjoyed a lot of it. I feel probably with a bigger budget, Troy could have done maybe some more kind of action sequences. There's quite a lot of people sitting around talking, but when the film shines, it really does work very, very well. And he shoots the murder sequences in a kind of Argento-esque sort of way with like the reds and blue filters, and it's very stylish. And the chase scenes in there are very effective. And the final scenes actually in the which takes place in the bar, which reminded me of that Hotline with the what's her name, Wonder Woman, Linda Carter. There was a scene. It kind of reminded me a bit of that TV slasher movie from 1982. is there's a, without saying what happens in it, but there's a kind of climactic showdown with the killer in a bar at the end of the movie, which is really, really well done. So I'm kind of, Troy, is really a talent to watch, and I'm sort of looking forward to seeing what he does next. And it'd be great if someone gave him a bigger budget to, really see his visions through. So I think we've all seen it, have we?
No, sorry, not. Troy. I've been going through some ish lately, and I completely forgot. But I will watch his film before the next show.
Okay, no problem. What about you, Erik?
Yeah, I saw it. I would agree with you. I think it, like as you say, it's hampered probably by its budget, but it shows great promise. And I mean, I was it kept me watching, which and there was also a character with a beard in it, which is quite nice. I was just wondering if maybe Troy has his phone number. No, I wasn't wondering that. No, I do. I mean, what was the second film he made? The
Stirring, aka Mrs. Claus.
Stirring.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I've seen Stirring. I did see Party Night. Good work. I think it was, again, these kind of more modern slashers wouldn't necessarily be my thing. I'm more of an 80s chap.
Thank you, Erik. Nathan, do you? What were your thoughts on teacher shortage?
I pretty much agree with you guys. I think that when you have a low budget, it does kind of, hamper what you really want to do. But I feel like Troy has a good vision. I like the idea behind teacher shortage. I think that's a lot of fun. He did, get some of the 80s Scream Queens back together, and that's, fun to watch. So, I mean, I was a fan. I think that anybody that likes, slashers and, is always looking for, good new one to watch, I think that would be a really good one for them to pick. I like the killer's getup. So, yeah, I mean, thumbs up from me.
Yeah, because did we mention the slasher alumni in there? Because there's Tamara Glynn from Halloween 5. Who's else again? I can't think of her name.
Brinky Stevens.
That's it. Brink Stevens is in there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he's got some big names attached.
Yeah, very true.
Indeed. So, well, thank you. Check out Teacher Shortage, which I'm not sure when it's being released, but I imagine it's going to be relatively soon. So, okay. Well, I think that's everything we've seen recently. So, it is probably time for the main attraction. So, is this your choice, Erik?
Joseph.
Joseph. Okay. Okay. Well, so you're going to bring us back in after the trailer, and here it is.
All right, you ready?
Let's do it!
Who's messing with the lights?
Friday the 13th. Rated R. Starts Friday, February 13th.
Searching for his missing sister, Clay Miller heads up to the eerie woods of legendary Crystal Lake, where he stumbles on the creaky remains of rotting old cabins behind moss-covered trees. And that's not the only thing lying in wait under the brush. Against the advice of police and cautions from the locals, Clay pursues what few leads he has in the search for his missing sister, Whitney, with the help of Jenna, a young woman he meets among a group of college kids up for an all-thrills weekend. But they are all about to find much more than they bargained for. Little do they know, they've entered the domain of one of the most terrifying specters in American film history, the infamous killer who haunts Crystal Lake, armed with a razor-sharp machete, Jason Voorhees. Okay, so right off the bat, the warning signs are there that all may not be right at Crystal Lake when you see Platinum Dunes pop up on the screen, immediately followed by the name Michael Bay. And what follows is this cold, sterile retelling of the original Friday the 13th ending, where Mrs. Voorhees, not played by the real Mrs. Voorhees, is beheaded, and it's acted with all the oomph of a high school production. And well, this problem will permeate nearly the rest of the film. That is to say, none of this feels like a Friday the 13th film. It's all, like I said, very cold and sterile, and it's got the wrong music, et cetera, et cetera. And just after we get that poor man's decapitation, something miraculous actually happens. This quickly shifts gears into this fun Crystal Lake back to basics setup, and it's brightly lit, it's jovial, lighthearted, and gosh darn it, I think I like these characters a lot. But then just as we're thinking, I don't want to see any of these characters die, they do quickly. And that's when the film completely loses me, I'm afraid. I love those opening characters, but then it shifts into a lesser group, I'll say. And it also essentially turns Jason Voorhees into this kind of sadistic chess player, when all I really want from Jason Voorhees is the old checkers player from the 80s. I love chess, don't get me wrong, but Jason's not chess. I've always asserted that the Jason we grew up with was this confused man-child. He loomed and he was scary in certain films, yes, but he also fell victim to a bit of clumsiness at times, and some of his kills were aided by happenstance rather than method. This Jason, in comparison, feels like a sadistic schoolyard bully to me. I mean, he burns people alive in sleeping bags. He kidnaps people, holds them hostage. And I'm sorry, he looks like a dumb action figure rather than Jason to me. And speaking of inanimate objects, let's talk about the cast here for a moment. I mean, because I can't be alone in thinking they were all exceptionally chiseled. I mean, the girls are petite, prim, and with what I think the old timers would call childbearing hips and tight designer jeans. The guys are extremely well coiffed and tanned to a golden perfection with just the right amount of bronzer to make sure they're all well oiled for the camera. I seriously felt like I was watching a bunch of mannequins, and this is where I want to point a middle finger at critics who lambasted the old Friday films with a bald-ass assertion that those films had cardboard characters. I mean, you go watch Jenny kick some ass in part 2 and then watch the 3-arc Tommy series turn a little clever kid into a disturbed teenager and then to a reluctant hero. Or, go watch someone like Shelley do more in half the screen time than most of the characters do in this film, full screen time. And then tell me the Friday the films don't thrive on its characters. I mean, they were real people. They did real things. They dressed like common, down-to-earth individuals, and they didn't drive $75,000 SUVs with rim spinners, and they didn't live in gigantic mansions and own boats. And this is important. They didn't act like douchebags for the sake of. I mean, that Trent character exists solely to be a complete and utter jerk. And when a film resorts to such lows to justify, just a death scene, that may fly with everyone else who, quote unquote, can't wait to see X character die. But I refuse to accept that kind of shit. I would rather, you spend the time on a character who elicits sympathy so that their death resonates beyond a superficial level. And that's the big problem, I think, with the Friday the 13th films, that I don't care about anyone in this film. I can't relate to anyone. And so really all I'm left with is just it's got admittedly great photography. I mean, there's that fantastic opening scene with all those characters that I did like. And I suppose the overall satisfaction that now that we've covered this film, I don't have to watch it again. But I don't know, this isn't a bad film. It's just, like I said, it's technically competent. It has a nice, slasher movie sheen. I wouldn't call it a Friday sheen, but it certainly looks good for what it is. And I can't fault it for being boring, because I was entertained, but I don't know. It's kind of wrong-headed. It just feels too drab and dark, and just it's not really fun to me. I mean, so Eric, you did me a solid by making the opening intro, since I was dealing with a lot of things at the time. But I think you may be of the opposite opinion. So let's hear what you think.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just a sense of disappointment I had when I saw it in the theaters. I actually thought it was an awful, awful film. It didn't stop me from purchasing it on DVD, though, when it came out, about 5 or 6 months later. And again, I watched it and I thought, no, this film is awful. And so it's been at the back of the cupboard gathering dust for the last decade. So watching it again this week, I was expecting to have a Rob Zombie Halloween type reaction to it, but I actually kind of enjoyed it in parts. I would say I can completely see where all the flaws are with the film that made me hate it so much back in the day. But I thought, like as you said, it gets off to a good start. I think I like the Paramount and New Line logos that are blood red, and I kind of like the hokiness of the black and white reprisal of the climactic moments of the original Friday the 13th. It's the poshest depiction of Mrs. Voorhees we've seen so far, because she's like, "You come here to me now, child. Come here." She's like Mary Poppins or something. And I love her severed head in this, because it's quite a poor effect. It reminds me of Inga's head in Bloody Moon. Do you remember the character of Inga, guys?
It rings a bell.
Sounds familiar, but I'm not. What? I don't really.
Yeah. Well, she gets decapitated in Bloody Moon, and it looks like a mannequin's head, and what Mrs. Voorhees' severed head looks like in this. And then, as as you said, the opening 20 minutes with the camping teens show promise, although for me it does reveal some of the big flaws with the film. I mean, the tone veers all over the place. We get humor and slapstick and gratuitous nudity. There's quite a lot of that in this film, actually. I mean, as you said, every actor in it is chiseled and is from, they have that sort of post-Scream sort of we're on a TV show and we look really pretty type look about them. Whereas in the original series of Friday the 13th films, you'd get a mix of different types of people and they felt very real. Whereas this one, they're just, as you said, mannequins, but all the women get their boobs out at some stage, which is, something that didn't, the Friday the 13th films were accused of having gratuitous nudity, but maybe one person might have a brief glimpse of a nipple or something. But in this one, it's just full on and they're waving their boobs at the camera and all that type of stuff. But I mean, juxtaposed with that is it's kind of the cruelty of some of the murders at the start, which shows the hallmarks of kind of Saw and Hostel, which were big business at the time. But I mean, hanging that girl in the sleeping bag over an open fire and sort of dwelling on her suffering is not kind of, for me, what Friday the 13th is about. I like the way that the victims in a lot of the previous films would be completely unaware that Jason's around and they're kind of dead before they have time to suffer as such. So it gives the film kind of that popcorn element. So, and then there's the characters then post, like the title card arrives about 25 minutes in, which I always think is really weird. But after that, when we're introduced to those new characters, I kind of agree that they're all kind of unlikable. Not that they're unlikable, they're just bland. Well, most of them are bland. I mean, there's the yokel character who's working in the barn, who licks the centerfold of the Playboy magazine and swears like a trooper. And thank God they didn't take that character any further, because I really think I would have disliked the film a lot if he'd stayed in it. I used to have a big problem with the character of Trent, who's the sort of posh, wealthy boy who's a real dick to all of his friends. I think he's probably the most interesting character of them all, just because he's so laughably obnoxious. And then his sex scene, which we played clips from the audio it's cringy, but kind of in a car crash way. I mean, he has dialogue like, "You've got your tits are stupendous and you've got perfect nipple placement, baby." I mean, you can only roll your eyes at that. I mean, that it doesn't get more lowbrow than that. And then he has his friends, the stoner Chewy, who is really annoying. The guy who gets the lotion and the Kleenex ready to have a wank, where anyone could walk in at any stage. I mean,
actually, you know what? I liked that guy and Chewy. I like those two characters. They were kind of like a Shelley Light, sort of, maybe. Shelley Light,
yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
So the characters of Jenna and Clay, I think they're quite likable, if not maybe a bit bland. But their storyline where they go off and they sort of find Jason's lair and that, and then it cuts back to the people having all their shenanigans in the house, like, "Ooh, your tits are stupendous. Oh, I'm going to go have a wank in the middle of the living room." The two, it's just tonally all over the place. As for Jason, I prefer the Jason from, particularly the Kane Hodder Jason films. I think it's where Jason looks his best, even though they aren't my favorite in the franchise. But here, I don't like Jason with hair. I have a problem. I like Jason to be bald, like my men. I don't know. The long hair Jason look that they had in part 2 just doesn't work for me. I'm glad that they got the hockey mask back, but I think he does come across as being kind of a menacing presence here, but I prefer the kind of the unstoppable supernatural air they went for in the 80s, where he kind of leisurely kind of walks or maybe jogs occasionally. But here, he, as you said, he looks like he's playing a chess game. He's thinking things out. He has a strategy, where I prefer when he's kind of this just almost inhuman force. So my overall assessment of Friday the 13th is, I think it's by far the best of the major slasher reboots that came out around that time. I mean, it's a huge improvement on the Elm Street remake, and it goes without saying it's light years ahead of Halloween 2007. But I actually kind of enjoyed it. I would say in retrospect now that I prefer Friday the 13th 2009 to Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, and probably I prefer it to Freddy versus Jason as well. So yeah, I was surprised. At how much of it I liked. Although I do agree that it is a very flawed film, but it's not as bad as I remembered.
I would say it's better than Jason X, but I think I enjoy Freddy versus Jason, and in a weird way, Jason Goes to Hell a little more. because I actually like the characters in both of those movies better than I like the characters here. One thing I agree with you. I did like Jared Padalecki's character. He was kind of bland, but he was likable.
Yeah.
I thought maybe he was a little miscast because Jared Padalecki is probably about as big as Derek Mears. So him facing Jason, it's like there's no real fear or tension there because he's about as big as Jason Voorhees. So it almost looks like an even match. So there's no tension there. It's kind of weird, hard to explain. And I also think Jason, he doesn't really look like Jason. He looks kind of like a pirate almost. He dressed like a swashbuckler.
He does actually.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah, it's kind of odd, but yeah.
Bring back the overalls.
Yeah. Let's see, Justin. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with this film. I mean, I as far as the because My Bloody Valentine came out around about the same time, didn't it? And of course, starred Jensen Ackles and who was Jared Padalecki's partner in this long-running Supernatural TV show. I thought My Bloody Valentine did a much better, the remake, much better redux, and of course it was in 3D. I think I kind of agree what everyone said already in a lot of ways. It doesn't really feel like a Friday the 13th movie. It feels like a Friday the 13th movie by someone who's never seen a Friday the 13th movie but has read about them and has kind of added a kind of shopping list. Oh, you need boobs, you need kills, you need this, you need that, and it doesn't really feel like someone who wrote it or directed it really had any real affinity with the franchise. I think it starts off really badly in so much that, if I was making it, it would have been a no-brainer to have done a kind of a greatest hits of Crystal Lake at the beginning, in the same way as a lot of the Friday the 13th sequels started or had flashbacks to the earlier films. Not necessarily suggesting doing that necessarily, but what you could have done is you could have had like the first 15 minutes as a real slam dunk kind of remake of the original film, with lots of death scenes, an extended chase with Alice from Mrs. Voorhees, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas what they do is they start the film and it doesn't even look like 1980. They've put the Alice character's got long hair. She looks like someone from a casting, model school in 2009. So they kind of fudge that sort of straight off. And I agree that the beginning, we're introduced to like the hikers who are going, the campers, and then they find the grass, and it feels much more akin to what a Friday the 13th movie was. But it just kind of feels like the filmmakers thought they were better than that. They thought, well, we'll throw away this prologue with these kind of slightly more likable characters. But then it kind of does this whole thing where you've got that sleeping bag kill you mentioned is completely not like Jason Voorhees. Jason Voorhees didn't torture people. It was kind of he's really like a one and done killer. It felt like they're paying, like I think you've mentioned, Erik, paying kind of lip service to like Saw and Hostel, but it just felt at odds. It's funny to say like a film where you've got like multiple murders is going to be, like popcorny, but it felt like it was missing that kind of popcorny feel to it. And it fell into that trap of like the second lot of characters, like just echoing what you said, but you've got like these chisel characters, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because, you've always had attractive characters in these. But the women mostly are interchangeable, which is a terrible thing to say, but I couldn't really tell the two blonde women apart. You've got Danielle, is it Panabecker, who's kind of like, they're basically kind of the mirror image of Jared Padalecki, where they can make puppy eyes at each other throughout the movie. You got what's his name, the Van Winkle guy, the arsehole character.
Travis Van Winkle.
Travis Van Winkle, who has got his character is just so, it's got like no, well, you're not expecting a Friday the 13th movie to have characters with depth, but to have somebody who could actually, not just be an arsehole the whole way through is just bizarre. You're thinking, why on earth are these people actually out with him in his family house by the lake, where he's telling them not to touch anything and everything is, so it's it just feels like a Friday the 13th movie by someone who doesn't either like Friday the 13th movies or didn't really understand them. So it's like one that's been thrown in a blender and just not done particularly well. So, and I didn't understand this whole kind of like Jason had decided to go to Valentine's Bluffs and come back and make a mine under Camp Crystal Lake. Just didn't make any sense. And then you had all of the kind of the weird locals who were very much like throwbacks to, and probably intentionally, to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, and obviously with the directors' connections with that. Sometimes you get foreign directors, and obviously Marcus Nispel was German. Sometimes they bring a kind of a slightly off-kilter feel to like Americana and something that makes it quite interesting. But I just think it missed the mark here. I don't think either he understood it or the people who made the movie. And of course, as you mentioned, Joseph, the fear of whatever into you is Michael Bay. The idea of Michael Bay's Friday the 13th is just a bizarre thing. So I didn't hate it. I just find it bland, vanilla. It kind of loses me after about 30 minutes. To me, it's the equivalent of adults talking in a Peanuts cartoon. It's wah 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 wah. It just doesn't hold my attention, and it's a real shame. I don't. How difficult can it be to fuck up a Friday the 13th movie? They keep doing it, but really. I understand you have to make a film for a modern audience, but it's a bust for me. I'd watch My Bloody Valentine 100 times, the remake 100 times, again before watching this again. So, it's not. I don't think it's a good movie, which is a shame.
See, that's the problem, is that they're making this for a modern audience, and the Friday the 13th films, that's our films. We're not a modern audience. We're the ones who you should make a film for, the actual fans. You should. I mean, I guess it's okay for people to have their sort of hostile version of Friday the 13th, but I don't know. It just doesn't work for me.
I don't understand.
I remember my initial reaction coming out of the cinema was, how did they get it so wrong? The Friday the 13th formula is so basic that it's so with that budget and that sort of quote talent behind it, you'd think that they come up with something better, and that was the problem I had at the time. I agree, it doesn't feel like a Friday the 13th film for the large majority.
It's like the studios, it really cements the fact that they're really just concerned with the bottom line here, and that's we'll hire some filmmaker or some writer who had a hit. It doesn't matter if the hit was a comedy or a drama or whatever, and we'll get them to write it, rather than outsourcing to someone who really knows the series, through and through. That's what, is what they should do. It's more about, hey, this writer made us a lot of money, so let's have him write it. And it just doesn't feel right to me.
What about you, Nathan? What are your thoughts on the Friday the 13th remake? I
probably would lean more to agree with Erik. I think I liked it more than you guys did. I love the whole, group of people, semi-secluded location, picked off one by one. The complaints I have are basically the same ones that you have. I think that sleeping bag death, it wasn't Jason. Like, Jason just didn't do that kind of stuff. Jason shot people in the eye with, he threw knives in cops' heads. He did a lot of instantaneous kind of deaths. So I don't know. I didn't really care much for, I guess, that. I did like the little mini slasher movie. And like you guys, I might have liked it a little more than the big portion slasher. I probably did a little bit. I think one thing that I didn't care as much for is that Whitney is kind of our final girl, but most of the movie, she's just chained up, like yelling for help. I mean, I don't know. I like to see more from the final girl in the film. And it's almost like once they rescue her, this is spoiler territory, the other girl who was kind of building up to be the final girl, they're like, okay, well, we don't need you no more.
I know. It's real throwaway. Yeah.
Do you think
her death is just so blah?
Do you think her death scene was a dream?
Yeah, Nathan.
No, because she wasn't sleeping at that point in time. Alice was sleeping.
She wasn't. We saw her wake up and have a shower.
Yeah. That was part of the dream. Oh. Have you not ever dreamed you woke up and did stuff? Mm-mm. I once dreamed that I woke up and went to work. And then I woke up and I really had to go to work.
Oh, no. That's the worst nightmare.
Yeah, that was an awful dream.
But you saw that picture I posted for Fangoria showing Alice with the ice pick for her head. Too. I know.
Yeah, cheeky.
Okay,
You're gonna try to call me out.
But do you think if you compare this to the prologue in Friday the 13th Part 2, or any of Friday the 13th Part 2 or Part 3 or Part 4, even Part 5 and Part 6, it's kind of it doesn't. I know you can't sort of capture that 80s. Well, you can capture the 80s feel, I can guess, and I think other films have done that more successfully. I thought again, going back to the My Bloody Valentine remake, that it was made for a modern audience, but it had that sense of fun to it of an 80s slasher.
It also felt like the original My Bloody Valentine as far as look and tone. As far, definitely photography, I thought it looked almost eerily similar to the original My Bloody Valentine.
Which just goes to show they could make it.
Yeah. This is just like, it's something like Friday the 13th Part 2. You have Jenny and Paul and Ted, and they just feel like blue collar slobs sitting around at a bar who just happen to be picked off by Jason one by one. And here it just feels like a bunch of Abercrombie and Fitch models just waiting around for a 9-foot tall guy in a pirate costume to kill them. I don't know.
What other thoughts have you got, Nathan? So you kind of you and Erik are on one side of the fence, aren't you, with it?
Yeah, I mean, I just love the slasher movie kind of setup, and I know this one kind of veers off of it a little bit, but for the most part, it's just a slasher. I like the death scenes on the boat. I like the scene where Jason's walking on that dock and the girl's hiding under it. I thought that was a fun moment. So, I mean, I think there's good in this movie, and I actually do like it overall. I just, it doesn't hold a candle to Friday the 13th parts 1 through 8, at least. Even part 8 is way better. It's just, no Friday the 13th after, part 7 really, but part 8 in a way has ever really recaptured the feel of those movies to me.
Yeah, I don't hate this like I would hate a Rob Zombie remake, but I'm just so ambivalent toward this. It's just so bland.
Well, especially considering the original film, the Friday the 13th, the original one was so controversial, wasn't it? And it also seemed to me sort of, again, a bit of a no-brainer in the days of, of gore movie, the Final Destination movies really upping the ante with what you could get away with in gore. Is that actually a lot of the there's not, and Friday the 13th was known primarily for its outrageous gore effects, wasn't it? That was the thing that got everyone talking. The Tom Savini gore effects, I can't believe they did that, and they could have made it more fun by actually really ramping up the gore in this to almost cartoonish levels, and it felt slightly restrained. It was kind of bizarre.
That's the same thing that happened in the Elm Street remake, where you think you have all this CGI technology, why don't you use it in some inventive way? And they don't in that one. And it's the same, in Friday the 13th, you think, okay, this is their chance to let loose and do some really creative death scenes, but it doesn't really happen.
No, it's kind of, I think it was, perhaps if the film had been made, I don't know, 5 years earlier or 5 years later, perhaps it might have been different. It just felt that you would have stuck in that kind of slightly cynical feel that you had of that time with The Hostel and all those films, and this idea, this kind of weird idea that filmmakers think the audiences want to watch unpleasant, annoying people on screen being killed rather than people you actually care about, which I know is odd. But it's kind of, you'd rather root for people, wouldn't you?
I guess to be a little fair towards the writers, maybe, like you said, Justin, they're trying to appeal to a modern audience. And I think, I hate to say this, but half of the modern audience, or at least 60%, probably act a little like these characters. So maybe that's who they were appealing. They're trying to appeal to.
What, to assholes?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. I mean, we elected Donald Trump. I mean, come on.
Well, yeah. But it's just odd. It's just that the idea behind it is so one for the ages. The idea of sex and death, mixing them together. It's always going to be saleable. It doesn't go out of fashion. What underpins the Friday the 13th movies, a bit of TNA and bloody gore effects, and chase sequences don't go out of fashion. It's you have to work very hard to. It just feels like somebody. It just feels, again, I keep on saying it, but like it's a Friday the 13th movie made by someone who doesn't really understand Friday the 13th movies and is doing a cover version, but doesn't really understand, doesn't really get why they worked in the first place.
Yeah, I was saying the two stoner kind of Joker characters, Chewie, and I can never remember the other guy's name. Like I was saying, they were Shelley Light. I feel like Shelley, I loved Shelley in Friday the 13th Part 3 because he had that character arc where he really likes Vera, and he's using that whole practical jokes as a mask to hide his insecurities, and you just don't get that kind of character moment in this film. And a lot of critics, like I said, they're like, oh, it's cardboard characters, you can't get behind. No, go back and watch the first 6 films. They had a lot of great characters. Yeah, I had a lot of great characters, and I defy you to say that any character in Friday the 13th the remake is better than any of the characters in the first 7 or 8 films in the original Paramount series. I disagree heavily.
Okay. Well, is anything left to say? We've put the world to rights. Unlike Friday the 13th, the original, this didn't spawn a sequel or a whole slew of sequels, although obviously that was probably the idea. And funnily enough, actually, if you look at the others, like My Bloody Valentine, which of course the original didn't, but and the Nightmare on Elm Street film didn't spawn any sequels. But I mean, this film was, and those films were phenomenally successful, weren't they? Really, in their own terms, financially.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Friday the 13th is going through a lot of rights issues, but I don't think it was at the time, was it?
No, because they wouldn't be able to put out the game, I think, if there was rights issues, would there?
No, and the film made something like, I don't know, it was, looking at the budget, it was something like 19 million, which amazes me they could have spent that much money on this film, but they did. But it still made, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but it's still close to 100 million, didn't it, at the box office? So
I thought it was in like the 70 million range, which is still a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah. But it's funny, isn't it? You would think, because I think, well, we're getting into background now, aren't we? But it's, the worldwide accumulated gross of it was $91 million, which is adjusted for inflation now probably be close to 100 million. So it made a vast, made a big profit. Well, obviously you take some out for all the advertising campaign and stuff like that. But it seems like a no-brainer that they would have continued this. They set it up, didn't they, really, as a continuation with the Jared Padalecki character and his sister it was going to move forward. And they didn't. I can understand if the film had bombed at the box office, but the fact that it was actually very successful, it just seems strange that they didn't exploit it. Or so I don't understand
because
why.
It's 11 years old now. At this stage in the original franchise, we had done 8 films.
Yeah.
I was about to say, guys, it's been 11 years since we've had a Jason movie, and that's just sad. And that's the last Jason movie we had. That's just, I don't know, it's depressing.
Yeah, well, we've had.
I just wish somebody would get this shit over with so we could get back to Crystal Lake already.
Well, apparently it's on the. I think it's heading for a kind of some kind of decision, isn't it? Last time I looked, it was kind of going to court.
Victor Miller.
Hopefully something happened. I mean, they've still got there's the films like Never Hike Alone, which are very well done, aren't they? But it kind of you want the fan films. Sometimes they're really well done, and Never Hike Alone is well done. And I think there's more Friday the 13th films coming out, the kind of fan films. And I think the rules are you can make these fan films, can't you, as long as you don't make any profit from them. I think that's the...
Yeah, a friend of mine, Jack Norman, did one, Friday the 13th, The Curse of Jason, and he played... what he did was, it's like a 25-minute short film, and he plays various incarnations of Jason, Part 2 Jason, Part 3 Jason, even the Part 5 Roy. And he does a really good job. I mean, if they were going to cast somebody to play Jason, go with Jack Norman. He looks and acts the part, to a T. It's a pretty good, fun little fan film too. I mean, it's very low budget, probably like $4 or $5 grand, but it looks pretty good considering what they had to work with. So there's a lot of good fan films out there. I think certainly better than the Friday the 13th remake, in my opinion.
Do you think, leading on from that, do you think that if now it has been 11 years, they can't really make a sequel? Well, they could do, but it seems a bit unlikely they're going to get...
No, I would assume they just go the whole reboot. I like the idea of them finally prove Nathan right. Go back and just make a sequel to Part 1. That way Alice is still alive.
I mean, a real.
Although I could not, I couldn't stomach them doing away with part 2 like they did with Halloween 2 in the hospital. It's just that would rub me the wrong way.
I mean, the film The Final Girls from a few years ago is a fantastic film in its own right. But you can imagine if they did want to do something different, they actually did a Friday the 13th kind of postmodern movie, but actually had it as Jason in there. That could have been fun if they wanted to do something different.
Yeah, because that movie felt sort of like a meta version of Friday the 13th. Even the killer, he looked just like Jason Voorhees, except for the mask is more blank. But yeah, it just felt like a more of a kind of a jokier supernatural Friday the 13th movie. Certainly more so than this felt like a Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah. So well, I mean, there was always the talk, wasn't there, about all the different things with Jason. Obviously, Jason has gone into space with Jason X, so there's nowhere else for him to go apart from the.
He hasn't been to Ireland.
Hasn't been to Ireland. Yeah, he could go. He could battle Rawhead Rex, couldn't he?
He could. That'd be awesome.
I would watch that.
Jason versus Rawhead Rex. Yeah.
But was it there was talk, wasn't there? They kind of many. I think there have been attempts to sort of try and get a new Friday the 13th movie, and there was one where it was going to be a found footage movie, wasn't there? There was that.
Yeah.
And Jason in the Snow. They were going to do that,
which I think would be really cool, wouldn't it? Because I think that could work really well.
Crimson juxtaposed with all the white snow. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. But. Yeah, or another 3D movie. They kind of. I mean, there's a lot of stuff they could do there. It just surprised me. And they pump out these sequels to some of the lower tier horror movies. Even now, you've got Children of the Corn, sort of part 422, and it's just odd, isn't it, that these kind of films like My Bloody Valentine and Friday the 13th and haven't gone down that route, and especially considering how much money the Halloween reboot made, on the Jamie Lee Curtis.
I still love Justin's idea that and Justin, I think I mentioned this many years ago on the podcast, but someone stole your idea of a Final Girls therapy session being overrun by Jason. We were at a convention, and I think it may have been Daniel Farrens who mentioned that they had an idea for a bunch of the survivors in this kind of group therapy session, and then Jason shows up. So I think you mentioned that well before he did. So they stole your idea, but that would be a fantastic idea.
That would be a good idea. I think it's kind of.
I don't know if I'd like that idea.
What bumping off all the things?
Because someone's alive. Now you're gonna have reservations about it now.
No, they're gonna kill a bunch of the final girls. They'd have to, if that's gonna be the movie. So I'm like, there's only gonna be one or two or maybe three left standing, and I'm like, no, if you survived a movie.
Well, maybe they could do they could get the lesser survivors and they could be the ones killed off. And then all the girls could be like this big girl power moment where they all gang up and just beat the shit out of Jason.
So I'd like that. Although I do think it would be kind of, it would be a rubbish chase scene between Adrienne King as Alice and Jason, because she wouldn't go very far with that ice pick in her head.
Well, she don't have an ice pick in her head. And Justin, let me tell you something. I'm looking at the image you shared right now. And that ice pick is in her cheek, not in her head, so it's obviously not Alice.
Are you trying to say that Friday the 13th continuity is always flawless?
Well, there could be some flaws there, yes.
So, should we talk a bit, some backgrounds, and then we'll talk about, we'll see what the people on the board, because I think this has actually had quite a big response, isn't it? One of our biggest response from the boards.
So what are we doing first? Are we doing background or?
Let's find out what people on the, what the consensus was on this.
Okay. So out of 289 votes, that's the highest one so far, even higher than Freddy's Dead. 59% of our voting audience enjoyed the Friday the 13th remake, whilst 41% did not enjoy it. Pretty high numbers for a remake. Our listener of the week is Lee Russell. And no, that's not the one from Vice Principals, Nathan, unfortunately. With perhaps a slightly controversial opinion, he writes, considering that the entire series is dog shit overall, very controversial.
Sneeze.
The remake hits all the highs for the most part, and it's pretty good. Guys, do you want to thank Lee Russell for his
controversial
comments?
Thank you very much, Lee. I respectfully disagree.
I respectfully disagree wholeheartedly, yes.
Yeah, I do too, but Lee had a very controversial opinion. It was worth repeating. Yeah. You can search for us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and our email address is info for general info or feedback for feedback at hysteriacontinues.net. I also want to mention we also appreciate all the likes and comments wherever you find us, but especially on YouTube, as their search algorithm is contingent on likes. You know, if you get a second, go over there and hit the thumbs up button on our videos. It will really help us out a lot.
We don't say the word algorithm enough on this show.
No, we don't. I had to throw it in there at least once.
Cool. Okay. Well, how about some background then on this movie?
Okay, the only thing I have, I didn't do any research into this because, you know, it's a Friday the 13th film and I have a stance that way. But I went to see this at the theater and they had these two huge standees with Jason's mask and they were facing each other on opposite sides of the wall. And there was this kid kept kicking one of them and his mother was like, stop kicking that. And finally the thing tipped over and fell over on top of him. That's funny. Yeah, so that's all I have. Just a little anecdote.
Okay, all right. Well, Nathan, what have you got for us?
No. Nothing.
That's a throwback to Possibly in Michigan.
Oh, God.
Have we met before? Possibly in Michigan.
In some strange department store.
We're obsessed. I told you we're obsessed.
I know.
Yeah, we're probably going to... Eric and I will be quoting this for a while.
Yeah, so
are you gonna pick it for Patreon?
Oh, great idea.
So, Joseph, I think we know who on the podcast is part of the Glee Club, don't we?
Hey,
huh? But the Glee Club, aren't they? You know, like this, like the nerdy ones at school who like singing show tunes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
we're not nerds. We're cool.
Okay,
we're cutting edge.
So, Eric, what have you got?
Some background.
Okay.
Was Egg the Thrall Falls just the war cry of your neighborhood, Eric?
No. Wasn't. How dare you? Okay, I have some background. Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so it's made by Platinum Dunes, as you said, who were the remake company of the decade. At that time, they'd already done Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Amityville Horror remakes. The original director for Friday the 13th was slated to be Jonathan Liebesman, who had directed Darkness Falls and Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, which I can't remember. Was that an awful film or was that a half-decent film? I can't remember. Nathan?
I don't remember it at all.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
The beginning?
The beginning.
I like the beginning. I mean, it's not fantastic or anything, but it wasn't terrible. No.
Yeah, I don't remember it being terrible either.
Is that the one? Is that the one where I think I got it mixed up with The Hills Have Eyes too? It's like a bunch of soldiers are being picked off or something.
That's Hills of Eyes too. Yeah,
the remake, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But the directorial reins were handed over to Marcus Nispel, who had done the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. He's only gone on to direct 2 more films in the 11 years since Friday the 13th, which was another remake, Conan the Barbarian, which I think was awful, if I remember correctly. And he did a film called Exeter, which is also known as The Asylum. But he made his name in the 90s as a music video director for artists that I know are beloved by Justin. So he did things like Things That Make You Go by CNC Music Factory, Spice Up Your Life by the Spice Girls. Justin loves that one. Love Is All Around by Wet Wet Wet. They're your favorite band, aren't they, Justin?
I think this is more your kind of style, Eric, isn't it?
Oh no, this one is your favorite actually. Life Is a Roller Coaster by Ronan Keating. You love him.
Oh, isn't he? He's dreamy.
The film was shot in Texas, which was an unusual location. Friday the 13th film in between April and June of 2008. Derek Mears was in the Hills of Eyes Part 2. He played Chameleon. I haven't seen that film since it came out, so I don't know who Chameleon is. He'd also been in the Cursed film, Cursed, the Wes Craven werewolf movie, which was famously a victim of Dimension Films tampering. It debuted at number 1 in the US box office, but apparently the reviews were so poor and word of mouth was so poor that it dropped off considerably the following week, and takings slumped by a massive 80%. And by its 3rd week of release, it disappeared out of the top 10. So it did all its business really in the first week of release. And it was a simultaneous release, in most of the major territories. So, I'm imagining that the bulk of its takings were in that first week. Maybe that's why they didn't opt to go with a sequel. I don't know. They just didn't have faith in the property, maybe. But, Yeah, that's all the background I have. Justin?
Okay, well, thank you. A few other bits. Adrienne King was approached for a cameo.
But her character is dead. She's dead.
Well, no, hear me out, Eric, hear me out. It says that she was approached by producers Andrew Form and Brad Fuller to do a cameo appearance during pre-production, but they decided not to go ahead with it, and she couldn't do it anyway because she had an ice pick in her head at the time. So
it was in her cheek.
In her cheek, yeah. The film was, as they say, I think they had high hopes for it because it was the number one film at the box office when it opened, and apparently it, with $42.2 million, had the biggest opening weekend of a horror remake, beating out the former holder, which was The Grudge in 2004. Victor Miller, who wrote the original Friday the 13th, and of course is at loggerheads with Sean Cunningham over the rights to the brand at this very moment. He said that the script was written in such a way that it could be deemed a sequel as opposed to a remake, which meant that they could pay him less if the movie qualified as a sequel. Which kind of explains why the film is kind of shot in some ways almost like an amalgamation of the first four films, because the Jared Padalecki character is kind of based presumably on the guy. I can't remember what his character's called, but the one in Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Rob, that's it. The Marcus Nispel, as you said, he was directed music videos. He also directed music videos for Billy Joel, one of Eric's favourites, Cher, and George Michael. So,
do you know who probably does like Cher? I say is Nathan.
Probably.
I love Cher.
There you go.
There you go. So, but yes, you were right about the film having a particularly, poor reception with critics. I mean, it's a little bit of a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if they'd made, Friday the 13th, the original Friday the 13th got terrible reviews, most famously, obviously, from Siskel and Ebert, who were so outraged by the film and Paramount's involvement with it that they spoiled the ending and encouraged people to write outraged letters to Betsy Palmer. So the film wasn't criticised in the same way as this time, because essentially from when I've looked back at some of the reviews, they essentially just kind of found it a bit bland. So it didn't really satisfy the critics in so much. It didn't satisfy them as a good Friday the 13th film, and it wasn't so extreme that it shocked them to say it was bad. So, some of the things, just kind of like bits and pieces here, where I've seen it. There was a funny review by someone called Catherine Monk in the Edmonton Journal, but I saw a lot of these films, and I've noticed this actually, a lot of the later films, a lot of them were syndicated, the reviews, which meant a lot of the newspapers didn't pay their own film critics, they just syndicated. So a lot of the time when you look at reviews in newspapers on these kind of later films, they're pretty much of a muchness, because most of them are identical because they're just syndicated across all of the things, but it criticised it by
Justin, it's interesting that you mentioned the reviews for this film. If you like, Siskel and Ebert hated the original, but if you go read Roger Ebert's review of this film, he actually almost gives it a favorable review, which is kind of odd.
I know. Well, it is odd. I mean, maybe he mellowed over it, but probably because he realised it wouldn't have the same impact. It said, just as a quote here from one of the reviews, it says, without any compelling human drama to nudge the denouement along, Friday the 13th devolves into a laundry list of death, where the viewer is forced to sit back and wait for each character to get stabbed, bludgeoned, hacked, or mechanically mulched to death. Horror movies are supposed to make us feel more alive by putting us on the threshold of death. But this Friday movie promises to sap the life from your eyeballs, that it wades through the rotting flesh of its own premise and one too many money-grabbing attempts to revive its lifeless form. So it's pretty much, most of the reviews I saw were all kind of sniffy, which is no great surprise. But most of them said it didn't even succeed as a decent Friday the 13th entry. So make of that what you will. But I think that's pretty much, apart from obviously the only other trivia, which is we've already discussed, is that this was the film that effectively killed the Friday the 13th canon, didn't it, for 11 years. So, who knows what will come next. I mean, I'm sure, I can't believe that, especially with what Blumhouse have done with Halloween. And I think Jason Blumhouse has said that he really would love to have a crack at the Friday the 13th movies, probably more so for the fact that he can make money on them. I'm talking of which, did you see that Jason Blumhouse said that about the new Halloween film, Halloween Kills, that it was pretty good, which is a strange kind of damning with faint praise, really, isn't it?
What, Jason Blumhouse said that?
Yeah, he's quite. It was.
Should you not be saying something better than that? Then it's awesome.
Well, I said when I put something on the Hysteria Lives Facebook page, I sort of said, well, is it kind of like pretty good as in shrug of the shoulders, or is it pretty good like Larry David would say in Curb Your Enthusiasm? But yeah, it's strange. I mean, I think Blumhouse had a reputation for putting out some really smart horror movies, didn't they? Like Happy Death Day. But I kind of get the feeling that they seem to be losing their grip on that. They seem to be churning out slightly cookie cutter stuff. I mean, like the Into the Dark stuff that I've watched it never really it seems a bit half-hearted, and Fantasy Island, which their new one seems to have got universally bad reviews, which
and then they had that Black Christmas remake which got lambasted hard.
So but he said that he would like to get his hands on the Friday the 13th franchise, but I guess we have to wait and see. But I can't imagine Jason's going to stay dead forever. It's very unlikely. So, talking of dead things, I think it's probably time for Eric's Joke of the Week.
It's my joke of the week. It's so fantastic.
Okay, so the character of Clay is rubbish in a crisis. He just crumbles so easily.
This place is cursed. Cursed.
That was good.
I got to warn you. You're doomed to stay. Go.
That was very clever, Eric.
Thank you. I had another joke, but I didn't. I think I might have used it before. Did you know the killer in this film ran after the man from Pizza Hut trying to get hold of a quattro formaggio pizza for his tea?
What?
He was chasing 4 cheese. Chasing 4 cheese, because that's what a quattro formaggio pizza is. It's 4 cheese pizza.
Oh my God! You never told that one, but
I think we would remember that one.
Okay.
Your first joke was great, and that one was just so bad it's good.
Excellent.
Was that a cheese joke?
So you had 2 good jokes.
Was that a cheese joke?
It was a cheese joke, yeah.
No, Eric, Joseph's. He said it was great.
Oh, great. Very good.
Everybody's on fire today. Everybody's on fire.
Nathan, what's your joke?
Did you know
Alice is still alive?
That Jared had a big chase scene with Jason on the water? He was in a boat and he had to paddle Eki it away.
Oh, the humanity.
That was a good one.
Well done.
Thank you. Especially for being put on the spot.
I know, it's very good, very good. So, right. Well, I guess that was Friday the 13th, the remake. So, what do we have coming up next time? I think we have a Nathan pick. We need I need to get an air raid siren or something, don't I, to when we get a Nathan pick.
I think you both are going to be very impressed with what I pick.
Okay.
We are going to go and watch Evil Laugh.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
Kill Connie. She's upstairs.
He's such a great friend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting. Right. That should be
I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, okay. Well, Evil Laugh it is. So, okay, well.
I honestly thought we'd already covered it, but apparently we have not.
No, that was Blood and Black Lace.
Here we go. Alan Dale.
Toya.
The girl with the big hair turns into a giant cockroach.
Yeah. Etc. Etc.
Simon Logan. We haven't heard from him in a while. I almost forgot about him.
Oh, Simon.
Do you think we might
disappointed us?
Do you think we might be living in a kind of Groundhog Day style existence?
Yeah,
I think we are.
Well, thank you for listening to The Hysteria Continues. And what are we playing out with, Joseph?
I don't know. I haven't picked a song yet, so I'll just surprise everybody.
Okay.
Toya!
No.
We had to play out with that caterwauling for the 1980s, 1985, didn't we?
No.
Oh, no, we didn't.
Grace Jones.
I picked Grace Jones.
Oh, that better choice, yes. Yeah. Okay. So, well,
I
anyway,
don't know.
thank you
just
for
don't know.
listening.
I'll find
So, say goodbye to the good people, and who knows when we'll be covering another Friday the 13th movie next, but maybe we will. Who knows? So, say goodbye, and see you all guys next time on The Hysteria Continues.
Bye.
Bye. I have perfect nipple placement.